Ek gesels met Dr. Sandile Ngcamphalala en hy is van Graan SA. Welcome to Groot Plaas.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mia.
It's really a pleasure having you here. I would love to know a little bit more about this documentary. I mean, where did it come about?
So look, as a program, so within Graan SA as an organization, we are running a lot of initiatives around supporting farmers, leading the issues of grain economics in this country to ensure that grain farmers are profitable, to ensure that grain farmers are sustainable.
Absolutely.
And within that range of grain producers, and by the way, when we talk grain producers, we're talking maize farmers,
Yes.
Sunflower, soybeans, and sugar beans, sorghum, and some of the crops we grow in the winter area, wheat, barley, canola, lupins.
What a big scope.
Yeah, so within that range of cropping, grain cropping, basically there's a lot of different scales of farmers.
Yes.
And one of the programs within Grain South Africa is a program specifically looking at the developing farmers.
Yes.
And the developing farmers in a context of, or at least in a definition of, farmers that are newcomers in the sector.
Yes.
And those newcomers will range from even at a household level all the way to a commercial or new era commercial farmers. But one of the things that we've seen is the smaller guys generally tend to be less celebrated. Their successes are sometimes sort of hidden in their households. So, in a partnership we have with Bayer, who is one of our key supporting friends of this program, we've really had an opportunity to tell those stories.
That's wonderful.
Just really, expose the joy that growth and prosperity and some sort of hope brings to these families. And I think what we have done, since the inception of the program, the program started about almost 20 years ago, just over 20 years ago, when Graan SA was established as an organization.
Yeah.
And what we've seen from then is a lot of farmers really growing and taking the opportunities offered by this relationship to the next level. And we wanted to showcase that to the public.
I think one of the wonderful things in this world is, I always believe in the saying, give honor where honor is due. And I love the fact that you're celebrating the small victories, because for a bigger farmer, it might seem small, but for somebody whose income and who's, providing for their community, it's such a big thing. When we look at you call it the household farmer, how big is, how many of them are there in South Africa, for example? It's quite a big...
Look, yeah. Look, I think in the South African context, you could argue that every household is doing some farming.
Yes.
Maybe it's 2 cows there, or it's 3 chickens, or it's a small garden in the backyard, or something like that. But every household does some form of farming. Yeah. But for us, what I think really resonates is the growth trajectory.
That's
so
beautiful.
It's like, so what?
Yes.
So what? So what we've seen, and I think that's what the documentary really shows, is farmers that started at a hectare, and suddenly they got excited of the opportunity, and then they had to come out of the household space, go out to look for more land, go out to look at renting land, go out to negotiate for land from the chief, or eventually guys that have had to buy land. And I think you will see in the in the documentary, one of the stars of the show is somebody that really started from very small. Yes. And now they are planting over 100 hectares, and they have this vision to grow. And for me, I think the point of that continuum of farmers is not to keep the status quo, but it's to recognize the levels at which people have access to resources and to work with those resources to nurture them to the next level. Otherwise, if you are expecting farmers that have 100, 500, 1,000 hectares, you know, to suddenly emerge, it's never going to happen.
It's
so
never.
even the guys that we are supporting at that scale, because we've got a totally different program of advanced farmers, at that scale, you already see that the guy started, you know, planting 100 hectares and suddenly he's planting 700, 1,000 hectares. There has also been a growth, you know, trajectory there. So you've got to appreciate those different positions and work with those positions to grow. But, you know, and for me, I think that's actually where our focus is at the moment, is to really try and identify households from farmers. In other words, while everyone is a farmer, technically not everyone is really a farmer.
Yeah.
You know, so we've got to be able to see the difference between that those farmers and be able to then target correctly and put our energy and resources on the guys that really have a dream to become farmers.
But Sandile, isn't it just the most amazing thing when somebody realizes, okay, I've got a small vegetable garden, I've been doing it, my mother's been doing it, my grandmom's been doing it, and that realization of, I can actually make money out of this. I can actually go somewhere with this. I think that must be quite amazing when somebody realizes that, right?
Look, and I think you know, one of the things I've picked up is that the way you can recognize that, chances are it's because it's in your heart.
Absolutely.
You know, it's hardly because you are well trained. It's hardly because you've got support. It's hardly because there is a study group that you belong to, or you know, you are in this grouping of people that are making money out of farming. I think there are a lot of people that have recognized the opportunities that farming offers, but they just don't have the heart. And for me, I think when you find a match between a farmer and his farm in terms of making money, then suddenly you get this bubbly person coming out of it and taking really advantage of all the opportunities around them.
I think it's so beautiful. It's one of the beautiful things. We're going to have a chat further just now. Bly gerus ingeskakel. Ons is nou terug. Ek gesels steeds met Dr. Sandile Ngcamphalala van Graan SA en ons praat 'n bietjie oor boere wat ontwikkel of ontwikkelende boerderye. Sandile, it's really lovely talking to you, and I'm thinking now the role that, let's say, the smaller farmer plays in the whole food security system. I think it's bigger than most of us might think, hey?
Look, certainly. I think one of the things you will realize in South Africa, and this is really a trend that is growing globally, is that there's a lot of food produced, there's a lot of food available, but a lot of that food is inaccessible.
Yes.
In other words, if you match food prices, and you match household income, you realize that, you know, a lot of people can't afford even the most of basics of staples. So really the opportunity lies in, how do you produce your own food? How do you make sure that you can provide for your family? You can provide for your kids. And I think, you know, the whole structure of poverty and hunger and how that works out to a family where a mother doesn't have anything to provide for her kids.
Yes.
You know, you lose out on that opportunity to support a young child. You know, babies, the critical stage is between that birth stage to 2 years.
Absolutely.
And we've also learned and recently recognized that it doesn't end there. You know, literally the whole development stage of a child up to 18 years or, you know, up to high school is critical for growth. Absolutely. And for me, that represents this idea of economic development, a future of a country. But if our youth and our people are, you know, almost undeveloped,
absolutely,
you know, then you run a risk of having a problem in the future. And I think if you compare that to the European countries, you see, or at least the developed countries, you see that there is a little bit more invested effort in supporting the issue of food security. And I think in a country like ours, we don't have that capacity to do it from safety nets and all of those funded social programs. Even when we do, it's quite limited.
Yeah.
So the opportunity really lies in everyone taking care of themselves. And I think we've seen it with grain farmers producing food for themselves. Out of a hectare, a person producing 10 times, 10 tons of yield in a hectare, and only using about a ton of that, and the rest being sold for at least some cash income. But also we've introduced in the program training that we call nixtamalization. It's basically a process of processing maize such that you can get more out of maize than just starch. So it just really, it's a technical way of preparing maize to help you gain more value. And so those are the things that we've been doing. But I see that the effort of producing food at the household, it's a game changer for a lot of houses.
Absolutely.
People who have food suddenly.
Absolutely.
But of course, the contrast of that is growth and money making and taking your kids to school and being able to buy more diverse food groups and and things like that. So income and food are definitely key.
Absolutely.
But I guess it's a start to produce your own.
It is, and we've got to start somewhere. And I love it. Sometimes it's just a mind shift. It's just a different way of thinking, right? Yeah. I'd love to hear one or two more of the success stories that you guys are focusing on. You spoke about, obviously people starting small and then just growing. Have you got one or two more stories?
Yeah, so there are two stories that I looked at in the documentary, and I was really, just amazed, at this opportunity that the program seems to be really giving people. One of the stories is So one of the stories is a young man that went to school, studied agriculture, and went to start working in the agricultural industry. And one of the things that for him was quite difficult was being away from home, working 1,000 kilometers from home. And eventually, one time he was introduced to this program by Graan on the study groups, and he got involved, and suddenly he was producing quite decent amounts.
Yes.
And then he went out to the community to say, can I access more of this land because it's unproductive?
Yes.
He was allowed to do so. He moved on to plant about 10 hectares. He moved on to now planting about 60 hectares of soyas and about 30 hectares of maize, and looking to plant more. The other story is really a story
We're going to have to keep that short. We've got about 40 seconds left.
Okay. The other story is about a farmer that has been part of the program for many years, but his kids have now taken over.
Oh, wow.
And they are now taking the business to the next level. They are one of the top performers in our program, and the whole enterprise is led by a lady, which I think since we are in Women's Month is quite a beautiful moment.
It is. Sandile, thank you for your efforts and thank you for coming to talk to me. Good luck.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the opportunity.